And this is where most businesses come in. Are you really solving a problem, or are you just more noise? And Steve Jobs says at some point you connect the dots, right? Why people tend to succeed in some places and not in others, because of the mindset. And mindset is like any muscle in your body. The only thing a wealthy man wants when he's sick is his health, and he can never buy that. When you figure out what you can win at, you have to start to say no to the other things that take you away from the focus on that particular thing. Try to have some project that you feel has a purpose for you or that you enjoy. It's just something that will keep you occupied mentally and you can continually learn. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable.
Today we have a special guest, Henry Woodman. He sold his startup, his business, for 8-figure amount. He bought a book license and now he is creating a TV show, and he will tell you his ventures, his businesses, and the valuable lessons he learned in his career. Henry, how are you doing?
Well, I'm doing great. You know, I usually say if I get any better, I'll be a walking Mardi Gras. As long as they don't throw those beads, you know, in Mardi Gras, then I keep my shirt on and nobody gets hurt.
I'm glad to hear you are doing great. I'm doing great as well. I'm so excited to listen to you, to have you as a guest. Such a colorful career. I'm looking forward to dive deeper into your stages of your business and to learn so much about your experiences. So let's start with the beginning of your career. You started probably pretty small, in a young age. Tell me more about your first venture.
Well, there were a lot of first ventures. When I was 13, I went to Mexico for a swim meet. I was a swimmer. I came back with a Switchblade. This is 1973, okay? So I came back with a Switchblade, and the kids in junior high loved it. So then I flew by myself back to Mexico to buy a bunch of Switchblades and then sell them to other kids at school. Yeah, that was the beginning of a delinquent childhood. I was into photography, so I had a business called Pet Portraits where I went around and put flyers in people's mailboxes to take pictures of their pets and then develop them in my house. Then I'm in college. I went to the University of Arizona in Tucson, and there I am sitting in a laundromat. I'm waiting for the clothes to wash and dry. I have a pocket full of quarters, and at the time I was addicted to Pac-Man. So I'm thinking, man, this place really needs a Pac-Man. It needs a video game. So I go back to my dorm room, call every laundromat in Tucson, and I ask them, do you guys have video game machines? And of course, they said no. And I thought, would you like one? And they said, yeah, a couple of them said, sure. I had no money, so I went to an auction and I bought these used machines that nobody wanted for cheap. I put them in a laundromat and people would put their quarters in. And ironically, if they didn't have quarters, there was always a dollar bill changer where they could get quarters to, they've got nothing better to do. I had a captive audience and I have a machine, and then they think, oh, this is a horrible machine. And I would start to move them around to different laundromats. So a new machine would appear the next time they went or a month later. And that was the first idea of opportunistic fulfilling a problem I had. I wanted to play video games while I was sitting around at a laundromat, and I had quarters. And that was a small business. I ended up making a little bit of money and then moving to Los Angeles.
I can imagine that thousands of people were in your situations. They came with this product and stuff. They were playing, they were into this video game, but you found this business idea and implemented it. I wonder what's the difference?
Well, listen, this happens all the time. A lot of people go, wow, really should have this, or man, this is a problem. I can't believe somebody doesn't do this, or somebody should figure this out. We say it every day. There are very few people that do something about it. I'll complain. I'll say somebody should really come up with a better way to do this. So it's so inefficient, right? But I do nothing about it. Now, there are people who will say, you know what? I had nothing to lose. I didn't have any family or mortgage or anything. So why not try something? It was also, as you say, opportunistically, it was something that, hey, it was a problem, at least for me. And this is where most businesses come in. are you really solving a problem? Or are you just
Yeah.
more noise? You're just another clothing boutique
Yeah.
store in the downtown area? Or are you creating something that is solving a problem, right?
Yes, that's a very important. That's how I also try to see at businesses. Whatever I do, I want to use my time here. It's limited, so I want it to have a positive impact in the world and in my surrounding. And by doing that, that increases the chances of success for businesses, especially in the long run.
If it's a problem you have and you have other people that have similar mindset, then those other people will have that same problem, if you will.
Yeah.
And if you solve it for yourself and there's a big enough audience, then you will solve it for the others as well.
Yes. So we learn from this experience that you should go with open mind, with looking for opportunities, and they emerge, and then to be brave, to dare to create something. And I like this attitude of, I don't have anything to lose. Other people would say, I have to invest some money, I have to invest some work, and I don't know if it works. But you are young. Money is a thing you can get anyway, and time is also it's a good experience. It's also interesting how you adjusted. If people are not happy, then you just found this easy solution without magic and without investing a lot of money. But how did you feel when you were creating this business? In your age, was it scary? Were you afraid of losing some money, or was it easy peasy?
No, actually, ironically, it wasn't scary at all because I had already done other things like pet portraits, selling switchblades and weird stuff. And
yeah,
for me, it was more of a bit of an adventure, if you will, because to your point, what am I going to lose, right? I literally didn't have a lot of money. For that matter, I had no money. And I took some college money that I had and bought a used machine. And so if that failed, what's going to happen? I didn't have a mortgage, a house to lose. I didn't have a family that I had to support or kids. I had none of that. And I was working part-time, waiting tables. I could do these things. And I really thought, okay, if I need this, maybe somebody else does. I don't know if I actively thought that at the time, or I thought, this is an opportunity that I think could make a couple of bucks.
Did you face some challenges?
Oh, well, yeah, always challenges. The challenges really were a machine breaking down. So I had somebody who was freelancing at a local tech place that would come and fix them. Some of the laundromats that were open 24 hours, people would come in and break the machine to try to get the money out of it, right? So there was the theft portion. Because it was small and fairly pedantic, I mean, it wasn't this monster business. It wasn't that big a deal, but those little things were kind of irritating. It's like, okay, so maybe I don't want to get into a 24-hour laundromat, and maybe I try to buy a machine that doesn't break down and stuff like that. And then you'd have to go around and take out the quarters every day or every 2 days.
Yeah, it's not just piece of cake all the time. If you listen to those stories, it always looks like, they started small and then step by step they become big. But even in the first steps, it's tough. It's a lot of work, and it's also inconvenience.
Yeah, scaling is hard. Scaling a business, any business, from small, which you can operate pretty easily and you can make stupid mistakes, to getting bigger. Yeah. You have to have the processes and the structure, and then you have to be able to expand that without, there's a lot more to lose.
Interesting. So what was your next step? You probably didn't want to scale this up. You started something else?
Yeah, the idea wasn't to stay in the video game business. It was sort of a sideline. I sold it and then moved to Los Angeles. I had believed I want to produce and direct movies, right? I'm going to go to LA. That was the hedonistic part of me. So I go to LA. I don't produce and direct movies. I end up doing the next thing I wanted to do, which was travel and work on travel films. So I end up working as what's called a PA, production assistant, on a travel film. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. You go around the world, you get paid for it, right? And you get to do some creative things in different places. Wow, okay, yeah, I want to do more of this. So I end up traveling around as a PA, as a sound guy and assistant director, and then eventually producing travel films. So I spend the better part of 10 years just in the film business, producing and directing and editing and delivering films for governments and tourist boards until finally, that's where the opportunity comes in again. I had produced a film in Chile in Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
And soon after, it went from a dictatorship with Pinochet to a democracy, right? And during the democracy, they added more television stations and a network. Well, of course, this is a brand new network that had no programming and needed content. So, opportunity. Wow, I could produce a show in Chile with this new television network. Yeah. So I took an idea from a US show. I bundled it together. I flew down to Chile and I presented it to the new network. And 2 months later, we were on the network with a show called Machos, which was a game show specifically targeted to the younger demographic because Chile had a younger demographic and because the government was running the shows really for their older folks. And it was the number one game show in Chile at the time. So I took advantage of that opportunity. And hedonistically, I loved Latin women, so I could go to Latin America. So there you go.
It's like a puzzle.
Exactly.
That builds automatically with your life. Or another analogy, it's like a boat that where the wind goes, you go.
That's right. It's like when Steve Jobs says, at some point you connect the dots, right? The fact that he took a calligraphy class in college, would you have ever, why would somebody take calligraphy? Is that ever going to help you? And the answer was, yeah, it did. Right? So, had I not had the understanding of producing content and having been in Chile and met the production company, I would have known, Chile has a new television network. It needs content. Nobody would have given me the time of day had not the dots been there before.
Which challenges did you face in this part of your career?
I think the biggest challenge really was not understanding the infrastructure in Latin America. It didn't work as it does in the United States, where people are more disciplined and timing is different. When you'd say, all right, we're going to build this set and we're going to go into a run through on this date, and that date is a day away and nothing was built. And you're like, what the hell? Right. And I'd show up and they go, yeah, we'll take care of it. It'll be built tonight. I'm like, really? Right. This is the mindset. It's like, yeah. It'll happen. And I would schedule meetings with the production team and they would show up 10, 15 minutes late. That was normal. And that didn't work for me. Right. I think I had to either change with them or I had to make sure that I had people on the team that were more disciplined, and the latter happened.
So your first important learning, or one of the learnings, was to hire the right people.
Yeah, it's funny because I would say to people, there was always an excuse. Of course, the bus was late or this person, or I needed to take my kid to school or whatever, right? I get it. It happens from time to time, but not regularly. And I said, the next meeting, if everybody is not here, the person who comes late, they're going to get one warning. And if they do it again, they're going to get fired. It's simple as that. And nobody believed me when I fired the first person, and it never happened again.
It's how they used to work with other companies probably, or for government especially. Then no one cares about punctuality.
Yeah, I think the other frustrating thing, at least at the time, I mean, this was in the early 90s, the infrastructure. Phones didn't always work. Things weren't always on time. So basic stuff that we in the US, where I'm from, had gotten used to wasn't the same in Latin America. So you had to kind of go with it.
So you also had to build some part of the infrastructure that you could outsource in America, I guess, no?
Or bring some of the discipline or some of the structure that I thought was needed in order to get to do the show, right? Because you want to minimize the errors or the issues, which means to the point I made earlier about building the set a day before it's not ready. And I'm thinking, if it had been built, then we would have realized some of the issues we had when it was built, right? The lighting and sort of the staging and things like that.
Why was your show better than others? What do you think?
Well, two reasons. One, it was hitting an untapped market. The 18 to 24-year-old, the country was big with it was a lot of young people, right? And they didn't have a lot of programming specifically programmed to them. And two, I took a fairly progressive approach. This was a dating show where we would set people up on blind dates and they would come back on the game show and they would talk about it. And our host always had this eclectic tie. So it was kind of unique and cute. It was like MTV-ish at the time, if you will, right? And that was something relatively new for Chile.
Yeah. Did you have imposter syndrome when you started this show?
I have imposter syndrome every day. I'm always imposter syndrome. Who the hell do I think I am?
Wow.
Right? I mean, yeah. And I was a relatively young guy. And in Chile, there's these people that would stand on the side of the road with a red rag and they would wave you in to tell you where you could park on the street. Then when you get done, you'd give them a couple of bucks or change and they'd pay the meter and they'd give them a tip. So when I'm in the show, I'm sitting there with a red rag coming out of the back of my jeans. And they'd go, "What's with the red rag?" And I said, "Because if this doesn't work out, that's where I'm going to be, on the street, waving you in to park your car," right? So you kind of have that mindset like, guys, this has to work. This is my plan. And if it doesn't, I got a backup, but you know what? This is not what I want to do. I think at the end of the day, you get different cultures. You start to learn why people tend to succeed in some places and not in others because of the mindset, because of the vision, because of the culture.
Wow. Could you explore this topic of mindset? Because for me, it sounds like a lot of pressure. And for many people, it would be even reduce the chances of success because if that doesn't work, I couldn't follow my dream.
Right. Well, I think, first of all, the mindset is much like, okay, this is the vision. Here's what this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing what we're doing. And this is everybody's role in that vision, if you will. So that's part of the culture thing. I'll use, because I pivoted in my next business, but in Chile, when I said, here's what we want to do, here's the sort of the goal is to get an attractive show put together for the demographics that we want and be able to promote it as such. And if everybody understands, here's why we're here, right? Here's what we're doing, right? And here's my role in building this, then we're all on the same page with the same mindset. If you're not on the same page and you're not in the same mindset, then maybe it's not for you.
Yeah. So do you think some people are more capable to work with pressure, with high expectations, and others are not? Or is it just everyone can adjust his mindset towards that?
No, obviously people have different backgrounds. So mindset also, if you come from a background where you had the ability to make decisions on your own, where you had some discipline, let's say sporting events, or you were into some sports, you have a mindset where it's more focused. If you have another where you say, it doesn't matter, do whatever you want, things always happen, then your mindset is not as disciplined and it may change, right? And mindset is like any muscle in your body. You can slowly adapt who I want to be and why, right? We worry a lot about, oh my God, the things I did, the things I said, the past, or I need to do this, or here's where I need to go, and I'm stressed about it. That's really hard to stop those internal thoughts and put your mind and say, listen, live for the moment and do what you need to do. And obviously, you're going to do the right things in your life to be physically fit and to eat right because you want to live longer or healthier. Same thing in work.
Yeah, I guess if you face big challenges over and over and you succeed or even not succeed, but then it's getting less stressful. You are more secure in yourself and you always know, okay, whatever happens, I will always find a solution.
Yeah, it's harder as you get older and you have more real world responsibilities, as we talked about earlier. But at the end of the day, the basic things like food, shelter, security. Hey, if you're living in a place and you have a nice roof and you have indoor plumbing and you can eat and feed yourself without much stress, you got a great life, right? Because there's a lot of people on this planet, and I travel a lot, and I look at their lives. They are happy. They don't have indoor plumbing, but you know what? They don't know the difference. They want to come to a different country for material things. But at the end of the day, I think that most people ought to look back and say, okay, I have the things, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I have the things I really need. I'm secure. Nobody's here trying to kill me, or there isn't a lion. I have food in a fridge, right? I have friends and family that love me, and I have a roof and a place to sleep.
Yeah, I think if you will look at richest countries, they are not necessarily the happiest countries. So it's not about money and material things. It's not only about that. You need a certain level, but from there on, it's on you to have this social environment where you are happy and all the other things.
Without a doubt. I mean, listen, when we look at the world, marketers are telling us, in order to be happy, you need to drive this car, you need to wear this clothes, you need to have this watch, you need to be this type of thing, you need to have this kind of money, wear these things, and you'll be happy. No, you won't, but we believe it. Listen, there was a time where I would buy cars that I couldn't afford to impress people that I didn't know, right? Yeah. And that was because that was the mindset. You're going to be happy if you achieve this or that. And the truth is that is not because you think that. That's because marketers tell you that that's the way it is. And that's the sad reality, which comes to the small business. How do you best market something? Hopefully they need it and it will improve their life. But do we need some of the things we buy? No, right? Do we need that $300 Gucci bag? Nothing against Gucci. But do we need that car, or do we have a Toyota, which will get us to A and B and has the same creature comforts?
Yes, exactly. How was your life during this period where you had so much work to do, so much pressure? Did you also have some kind of work-life balance, or did you just work 20 hours a day or something?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I was in Latin America, it didn't matter because I didn't have a family. I had my sort of focus. When I moved back to the US, eventually I started a business and I pivoted, and then I got married and I had a daughter. That adage, you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with. I asked people who were more successful than me, and I said, listen, give me some advice. Looking back, what would you have done differently, or what should I start to look at? And one of the things was, and I don't like the idea of work-life balance because it's the same. Your work and your life is your, life, right? But I think it's a matter of balance. And that is to say, you've got to go and do some workouts. I would walk the dogs in the morning. I would take my lunch breaks and go swim. And that was part of a daily routine. And I would try to get off of work at a decent hour, 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, and go home and spend time with my wife and my daughter. This was some of the things that the advice that was given to me was, don't do all of this. You make a lot of money and then your daughter doesn't even know you, right? Or has graduated and you missed all those years. Okay, got it. Is the money more important, or is the fact that you actually have a relationship with your family or daughter, or you haven't divorced them or they haven't divorced you?
Yeah, that's really a valuable advice, I think, because most of the time we focus only on advice in terms of business. But if you are unhappy, then no matter how much money you have, it will not solve the unhappiness probably without the family.
The only thing a wealthy man wants when he's sick is his health, and he can never buy that. So if you're going and say, listen, money is going to solve all of my problems, it is not, because your problems really are, I need to stay healthy mentally and physically. And in order to do that, I need to move, do some workouts, right? I need to eat well, not a lot of crap, and eat healthy. I need to sleep, get my rest so my body recovers. This is the hardest one. Try to minimize my stress, right? And when you're running a business, it's always stress. It's stress about the employees. It's stress about the money. It's stress about the clients. It's stress about everything. Oh, I can work out and try to alleviate that. I can eat well. I can try to sleep, but I'm stressing. So it's the stress part that was always challenged.
What was your next step?
So when I'm in Chile, I realized at the time they had this new thing called digital editing, where you can take these pieces of stuff digitally and move it around. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. Then I realized, oh my God, you can take a 360-degree virtual tour of a city, a destination, a hotel room. That's the coolest thing ever. So from doing travel videos to then thinking, I don't have to travel with all these guys and all this luggage. I could have one single shot camera, travel around, do virtual tours. Ooh, yeah. So I set up a business called World Travel Vision, and we bought the second one-shot camera ever made to do 360-degree tours. So I would travel around and I would shoot destinations and hotels. And at some point they said, how do we get these? I would give them a CD-ROM. They say, how do we get these virtual tours on this new World Wide Web thingy? I'm like, huh? I just give them a CD-ROM. And they said, there are no standards, right? So I said, let me see what I can do to help. So I start looking into this and I realize, okay, so the value isn't so much in the production, the creating of the content, but in the distribution of the content. And so I pivoted from producing the content to a new company that I called ICE Portal, Internet Content Exchange, that would then distribute that content, right? Because the travel sites, they had these, Expedia and Travelocity, they had these hotels that didn't have pictures because the reservation systems only had the rate and the availability, but no pictures. So we started delivering first virtual tours and then eventually pictures. And we grew and scaled it to 60, 70,000 hotels would use our platform to deliver their pictures to all of the travel sites on the planet.
That's amazing. That's, again, the best timing.
The hedonism was, I can travel without all these people and luggage, and I can do the virtual tours. And the opportunity was, okay, so this is a problem. They can't effectively deliver pictures in the right sizing and tagging and categories that is needed. And it got worse with IP issues. Let me try to find a way to solve that problem, because I think it's easier to compete with that. And I didn't know how to write technology, but easier to compete with that. So let's do that.
What made you change from this Chilean successful show to do something else?
I think the simplest reason was that the infrastructure was frustrating. And I thought to myself, if I did well in Chile, I would still worry about people coming in and jumping the fence. And it's not as safe as the US. And I can't change certain things about the country. I would rather be a middle-class citizen in the United States. And so let me move back to the country that I'm used to, where things run more succinctly. I didn't have to worry about phone systems breaking down. I wouldn't have to worry about traffic and craziness. And I wouldn't have to be in fear of my security if I made decent money, right? So I moved back to the US for that very reason. That was the primary reason.
How did it feel to start from kind of scratch in USA again?
Actually, I kind of morphed, because when I moved back to the US, I started producing TV commercials for a television studio here in South Florida. And while I was there thinking about the virtual tour thing, I actually sold it to them, and then we started our first client with them for Starwood. I was working for them. I was producing videos and virtual tours for Starwood, and I thought to myself, okay, so I can do this on my own. I will leave that company and I will start World Travel Vision doing virtual tours. So it was a transition from producing the TV show to producing commercials, to producing these travel videos again for Starwood, and then to the virtual tours.
So you were employed for a certain time in America, and then you became self-employed. So there is no direct way to success. We see it over and over with your story, that it's not the first idea that came to your mind. That's where it brought you to the biggest success. But there were some direction changes, and it's built on top of each other.
Sure.
You go with your heart, you choose with your intuition, whatever feels right. And then from there, you discover new opportunities.
That's exactly right. It's connecting the dots, if you will. I mean, at the end of the day, if I would have continued with World Travel Vision producing virtual tours, I would have had any kid with a camera and a computer as a competitor, and it would be hard to justify telling people you have to pay for my travel costs to shoot your hotel in whatever country you're in. when there's a guy right down the street who can do just as well for half the cost. So that also looks at, okay, so how difficult is it going to be competitive-wise, or how can I build a moat, which is what we say. How do you protect yourself from competitors? Now, with ICE Portal, right, you can say, what a great idea. And you go, I'm going to build this technology. It will help hotels deliver their images to every travel site. Yeah. So you go to the largest hotel chain in the world, Wyndham, right? They have 9,700 hotels. And you say, listen, I've got this platform. It will do everything, size, tag, categorize. It'll pick your nose, right? And they go, great. Whittle, I love it. Where can you send it? And you say, well, I'm working on a deal with Expedia and Booking. Okay. Where else? Because literally there are hundreds of sites. And you're like, oh no, that'll take a while. They go, well, listen, call me when you get there. So there's a huge barrier, chicken and egg. I can't deliver here until I have the content, and I can't get the content until I can deliver there. So we evolved that building over 20 some odd years. So it wasn't oh my God, I have a great idea, it's going to blow up. No, it took a lot of time.
Yeah, especially when the technology is not there yet. You need to find solutions that don't exist. But that's also the opportunity, because there is not so much competition. If you started the same business nowadays, it would be a much more difficult probably, or impossible.
Well, and the other thing, when I started the business, hosting and the bandwidth costs were much more expensive, right?
Yes.
We didn't lower our costs, but when we finally got to put stuff on Amazon Web Services, the costs were low and they kept getting lower. So you're like, wow, I don't have to lower my costs, but I can certainly take advantage of the economies that have lowered the cost point from technology. So technology is lowering as well. And if you get in and you start building and it's expensive, it might get better.
Yeah. So you can also assume how it will develop, that it automatically will be improved and the costs will reduce. And you can even assume even if you don't make a lot of profit now, but the technology will be better in a couple of years, that's where you'll be even more successful.
Well, let's hope. Technology generally has a way of getting cheaper as it gets more ubiquitous.
With your previous ventures, with Chile, you were 10 years, I think?
No. In Chile, I was only about a year and a half. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It was short one.
I was doing the travel films for the better part of 10 years.
Yeah. And then 20 years, the ICE portal, yes?
Yeah. At least 20 years.
Wow. So would you agree that to create something bigger, you cannot switch all the time, like half a year here, 1 year here, but you have to build one particular thing for quite some time to achieve something bigger?
I think it really depends on if you're a hedonist like I was and you would travel around doing travel films. Oh yeah, that was fun. And you can continue doing that. And if you get good, you can do it for the rest of your life. But if you want to follow up another path, let's say technology, all these people that say, oh my God, they built this platform and they made a success overnight. Usually that doesn't happen. There are very few exceptions. Yeah. Let's say, what was it, Instagram that sold within a year or so? Yeah, I get it. But at the end of the day, when people talk about what do I do, sometimes businesses take a while to mature. And if I were to start this type of business now, there are two problems. One, you've got the growth integration. And two, there are a lot of prospective clients that would say, who are you? Are you going to be here in a year? I don't want to invest money and time integrating with you. You may have a better product, but I'm not sure if you're going to be around. And that's a challenge, right?
What do you think are success factors of this ICE business? What did you do better than your competitors?
Well, to be honest with you, we only had one competitor. And there was a time where they monopolized the space, locking exclusive contracts with what's called the GDSs. And we were really lucky because one hotel group, that was Starwood, said, you know what? We like you guys and we're worried about this monopoly thing, so we're going to stick with you. And we sat there for 5 years waiting for those exclusive contracts to end. While we were waiting and suffering to survive, we would ask hotel groups, I know you're involved, but tell me, are you happy? And if not, what things are you frustrated with? What can we do better? And we would learn and we would try to implement some of those things. So literally the month after their contracts were expired, we went from 1,000 hotels, that was Starwood. And within 6 months, we had 22,000 hotels. And that was because the market had opportunity that they weren't addressing simply because they were a de facto monopoly. And we came along and we said, what are the challenges you're having? How can we make it better? And we tried to make it less friction, easier, simpler. We'll connect to your system. We'll do all the magic. We'll give you the reports. We'll do the things. We won't charge you these ridiculous rates for different things. We're going to charge you a flat fee. All of the things we learned along the way were simply because we did it, because if we couldn't, we wouldn't survive. And so I think the process to grow was really a matter of understanding. We had one competitor. It was great that we knew and we learned from their challenge or the clients having challenges, and we tried to implement those things. Fortunately, at least for us, there was not a lot of, I have to market to individual hotels. We would go to the big group, let's say Hilton, and Hilton would sign a contract with us, and every Hilton on planet Earth would go through our system, right? So we would have to call the Hilton in New York and the Hilton in Shanghai and wherever. We'd have to deal with one Hilton, one corporate office.
Did the market become more competitive?
No, because it was really, really hard for an entrant to break through. Because first of all, once you get a client, it's almost like a marriage. It's very hard to leave. Once my system, or ICE portal for that matter, is integrated into your system and is pulling and exchanging information and then going and distributing those visuals to hundreds of travel sites, to make the change is very difficult. And so the only way that's going to happen is if there's something horrible. You really mess it up for them, or you're charging them ridiculous amounts. So somebody to come in would have to do two things. One, connect to all of these travel sites, which is probably next to impossible unless you have something to give, content. So if you don't have the content, you're not going to have the connection. And you're not going to have the connection if you don't have the content. Because we started relatively early, right, in the 90s, and started to realize this was a problem, we could just slowly assimilate into that solving of a problem. Now, I think things are fairly mature with respect. You don't go to a travel site now and see it doesn't say picture not available. That doesn't exist anymore.
How was it when you got this offer to sell this company?
Yeah. Had I known then what I know now, I don't think I'd do anything differently. But what happened was we were in a good position. We were growing. We were well established. A couple of groups came by and they inquired to buy the company. And of course, I had a number on my mirror for a decade. And so this company comes along and they say, we're very interested. I said, listen, I'm always interested. And we start talking and I say, but let me be clear. I have to be at a certain level from revenue wise, because I believe I need to get a certain multiplier for selling the company, because I had this number in my mind. And they ask the number, I tell them the number, and they think I'm full of it, and they leave. A month later, they say, can we fly in the COO and the CFO and all these people? It's a multi-billion-dollar company. And so they fly in a bunch of guys, and we're at a meeting, and they throw out all these numbers. And I say, listen, guys, I'm going to be completely honest with you, because I don't have any debt. I don't have a board. I make pretty good money. I sleep well at night. I was in a strong position, right? This is my number. And I'll be honest with you, you will overpay today for something you will underpay for tomorrow. I believed that, right? This was just before COVID, right? Now, imagine a hotel group with hotels all over the world saying, I'm going to completely close off all of your revenue. Yeah. Wow. So I sold the company for the number, because they looked at each other and they go, fine, you got a deal, right? Without an investment banker. So I was really lucky. Wow. Right place, right time, sort of arrogantly thinking, yeah, I'm going to grow it. And I would have, but I would have suffered during the pandemic, like all the other travel companies.
How did you feel after you sold it?
almost a pinch like, wow, is this really true? Is this really happening? I'm still the same person. I'm somewhat frugal, right? I mean, I travel more and I live a little more comfortably, but I think that it was one of those, wow, am I grateful for what I had gone through and what happened. There were times, obviously, in any business where you're on the verge of bankruptcy, right? I had to mortgage my house and get a line of credit just to pay the bills and pay the employees. And for the first almost 7 years of the business, I barely paid myself. So I sucked it up, believing that I could make it work. And I didn't know anything about running a significant tech business. So I went back to school. I got my MBA. I read books. I asked people questions. How do we do this? What's the best idea? And we started to get that structure and those processes built so that I can scale. I even said to the employees, imagine we're going to have an office in Europe that can never talk to us. And they want to learn how to structure the business and build all of the things and do all the customer support. Create a support manual, a standard operating procedure, SOP, so that they can read it and know exactly what to do. And even when the company acquired us in the data room, meaning they would ask for all the documents and the financials, within, I think, 24 hours, we had every one of the 3 pages of documents they wanted like that. And they go, that's the first time that's ever happened. And I said, yeah, we document everything. We keep it up to date. We maintain it and we improve it continually. If somebody comes into the company and says, you're doing these 5 steps to get this accomplished, I could do it in 3. And here's how. Yeah. I'm saying, do it. Let's update it. Let's be more efficient. Let's spend less, what's called Muda from lean management and Kaizen. Let's improve continually so that we get a more efficient platform.
Did you have situations during those 20 years where you wanted to give up this business or to switch to another business? There are also so many new trends all the time. So it's pretty enticing, like, oh, I want to go to the social media. I want to do something else.
Sure. Yeah. I have a joke I tell people. I say, I went to the doctor and I was concerned that I had ADD. And the doctor runs his tests. I come back a week later and he says, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is you don't have ADD. I'm like, oh, well, what's the bad news? He says, you have ADSO. And I go, ADSO? What's that? Attention deficit, shiny object. And that's kind of the challenge. Entrepreneurs, when they start a business, they kind of have to be whores for nickels. Anybody with a nickel, with a decent, I need the money, I'll take the job, whatever it is. If it's not in my wheelhouse, I really need the money, right? And I say, yeah, you have to, or you're going to die. Eventually, when you figure out what you can win at, what you can be the best at, you have to start to say no to the other things that take you away from the focus on that particular thing. That's kind of, and to answer your question, there were plenty of times where I thought, why am I doing this? I was getting more money from other things. Why would I do this? And why would I put my house on the line and this competitor and this, So one of the things is I asked myself, well, what else can I do? Many entrepreneurs will do that. And they'll say, I don't really want to work for somebody else. And if I do, I have a limit on what I can do, right? Will I be as happy? Guess I'm going to have to suck it up and see where this goes. So yeah, that happened a lot.
Wow. You see those shiny numbers and shiny success on the top, but it's just the peak of an iceberg. And underneath, there is so much struggle, so much effort, so much maybe even like worrying.
Yeah, because I coach small businesses as well, because I try to tell them or help them learn some of the things that I didn't know at the time or that I later learned. And one of the things I say, if you want opportunity to find you, you need to be standing on the corner of prepared and lucky. Because if you're lucky and you're not prepared, you may not see opportunity. If you're prepared and you're not lucky, you may not see opportunity. But luck plays a big part of it. Right place, right time, right connections, networks. It doesn't matter, right? But you also need to be prepared. I need to have my ducks in a row. I need to have the structure and the processes, and I need to prove that this can work. And somebody will find you if you're lucky. Because there are a lot of good people out there and a lot of good businesses that are not prepared, and they might get lucky, but not as many, and vice versa. They're prepared, they don't see the luck. But if you're both, you stand a greater chance to finding that opportunity.
Could you tell us a few examples of being prepared as a startup, as an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. Clearly understand, first of all, document the things and have the structure. The process is simple. I have to understand, okay, what exactly are we doing here? What's the vision? Where are we going and why are we doing it? Are we solving a problem, or do we just think, oh my God, let's go out and make some money and there's no real substance here, right?
Yes.
So what's the vision? Are we all rowing in the same direction? Do we all see the same vision? Are we aligned? Because you don't want a culture where people have different understandings of what it is you want to do or what you're trying to do, and then continually improve and document it. Not everybody is going to be there always, for example. So if you say, listen, that Will guy, he knows everything about it. If he leaves, oh my God, we lose all that knowledge. We can't let him go.
Yeah.
Right? Will has documented everything. Here's how it works. Here's what connects to what. I think what's important is rewards, right? Now, it doesn't always have to be about money, because when you're a small business, there may not be a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
But you can tell people, and this is what I did, so I don't tell you what to do, but I had two things. One, I gave the key employees that I wanted to keep what's called phantom stock. And so I would say, listen, Will, I know I can't necessarily afford what you should be paid because you're really good, but I am intending to sell the company. And when I do, I want you to get a reward, right? So I'll give you a percentage of the company called phantom stock. So when we sell the company, you will get rewarded. And it will vest over 2 years, meaning if somebody comes in and buys the company, go, listen, I need Will because he's an integral part. He has a lot of knowledge. I don't want him to take the money and run. Will stay there for 2 years because he gets tranches of that money every 6 months. So that is one way to retain the employees that you believe you want to stay for a long time. And the other is profit sharing. I was clear. I would say, here's exactly where we are. Here are our numbers. If we profit every quarter, I will share some of that money with everybody on the team, because it's not about the salespeople make all the money. No, we all have the same vested interest. The company does well, we all do well. So they would understand they would get a piece of that money depending on their tenure, on their position, on their likability, if you will, whether they want it. And people believe that, hey, Will's the right guy. He's really going after it. He knows the culture and the vision.
Yeah, that's a very valuable advice, I think. What was your next step?
So I sell the company, and 40 years ago, I said 40 years ago, when I thought I was going to produce and direct movies in Los Angeles, I read a book and I fall in love with it. And I think, oh my God, this is going to be a great movie. And so I buy the rights to the book. Of course, I never made the movie, and the world has changed. Now there's opportunity because we have all these streamers that are needing good content, and they have also niche audiences. So just recently, a couple of weeks ago, I published the book as a first step to then developing a series for television on the basis of the book. And I'll give you the backstory, because it's like, what? You bought a book in 40 years? My father, who was an author, wrote the book. He wrote it as a tribute to a friend. He was a travel writer, a nonfiction writer, and he wrote this not intending really to publish it. And my sister read it when she was helping him move. She goes, what is this? She loved it. She sent it to me. I read it. I loved it. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I had a friend in Los Angeles who was at the time was producing a movie. And I said, can you read this? Because that seems kind of nepotistic. It's my father. He reads it and he says, my God, this is amazing. I love it. So obviously we go in different directions. And I say, when I sell my company, we're going to get together and we're going to develop this. So instead of a movie, it's now going to be a series. And the first step is to get the book published, which just happened. And then we develop what's called the pitch deck. Now I'm not in a rush and I'm not desperate to get it done. Yeah. So there's opportunities to that. And it's also when people say to me, oh my God, I'm going to retire and I'm going to sit on the beach and do nothing, or I'm going to play golf. And okay, yeah, after a couple of weeks, you're going to be bored. Then what? Try to have some passion or some project that you feel has a purpose for you or that you enjoy. It doesn't have to make money. It's just something that will keep you occupied mentally and you can continually learn, because otherwise you're going to be miserable, right? We as humans need to be doing something.
Yeah, definitely. Are there some challenges now with this project? Or is it now? Yeah.
Of course, the challenge really is, again, another pivot. It's a new industry for me. 2, I don't know that industry well, and I know that it's notorious, just like the music industry. There's only 1% that are making the money, right? Even in the publishing world, nowadays, 3.5 million books a year are published. So you think,
yeah,
how is it, unless I'm a famous author, that people know about the book? Right? Marketing is everything. You have to go out there and you try to get a little bit of publicity. You try to do different podcasts, if you will, to let people know that this book exists, right? And then once that happens, then you have, look, the last Oscar nominations, many of them were derivatives of a book. So you have another tool in the tool belt. So for me, it's looking long term. All right, what is going to make the best pitch deck? Oh, the concept coming from a book. The book has done fairly well. And then the series does a much deeper dive into the intricacies of the book, because the book talks about reincarnation and soulmates. And then the series is a much deeper dive into who in your previous life, if you believe in that, is now part of your current life. And were there things that you need to resolve, karma you have to pay, or sins of the father, things of that nature.
That was such an inspiring story and so many valuable advice. As last part, what would you like our listeners to do? To go to our website, to buy your book?
Well, I'd love for them to buy the book and spread the word. The book is called The Reincarnation of Marie. And I created a website called Marie the Story, which has different options of where to buy the book. Most people will buy it on Amazon because it's the biggest bookseller. And MarieTheStory.com will give them some insights onto the book, some of the places where it's sold, the series coming along. So at the end of the day, primarily, I think, is read the book. Most of you will love it because it is an intriguingly passionate short read, and give it a review because more people start to get it out there, and its word of mouth marketing is by far the best.
Yeah, that's 100%. Is there an audiobook for that, or is it in the planning?
Yeah. So I like most people I'm very lazy. I don't like, I love learning and I love listening to books. But my God, there's a stack of books right over here that I need to read that I would rather listen.
Yeah.
So I said to the publisher, I said, listen, I need to do an audiobook. So do I need to find some voiceover talent? And she says, you have a pretty good voice. Why don't you do it? And I'm like, no, I'm not a voice actor. No, it would be terrible. And so finally she convinced me to do it. So there is an audiobook. I am the reader. Now I am no talent, but I get through it. And there are music transitions from Chopin, which are done by my nephew. So my father wrote it, I voiced it, and my nephew, his grandson, does the Chopin piano transitions in the audiobook.
I know what I will listen to this weekend.
And I'm sorry you're going to have to listen to my voice more often, but I hope you enjoy it. I'd love to get your thoughts when you're done, what you think about it.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for your time. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate your time. Much appreciated. I hope people got something out of it.
I'm pretty sure they will. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.